Hi everyone, it's Zahid here from Abbey Property. We've had loads of maintenance related questions recently from landlords, so I thought it'd be best to go over those today, as well as we'll be trying to keep it as short and as concise as possible. So I'll be going over the landlord's responsibilities as well as what are the tenant responsibilities and how quick the repairs should be done, the energy, the efficiency rating for the EPCs, the communication frequency, and how tenants can or cannot hold back rent. So I'll be going over that to let you know what the answer is on that, if any maintenance issues are standing, and can you charge tenants for repairs, are property expenses tax deductible, maintenance insurance, etc., everything. So let's get started with that. So it'll be a lot to remember, so I definitely recommend heading over to our website where you can just download the information and just utilize it as a checklist. That's abbeyproperty.com. So let's get started. So generally speaking, it's always the landlord's responsibility to ensure the property is well maintained during the tenancy. So that will include water, heating, electrical related issues, etc. And in reality, it's the best interest of the landlord to ensure the property is kept in a good condition, as well as because it's his or her asset and they want to look after it long term. So you may be thinking, what if the tenants damage the property? We'll come to that very shortly as well. Another reason you want to ensure you're fully updated with the maintenance is because you cannot legally evict a tenant if maintenance issues are outstanding. The tenant may use this against you if you seek eviction at some point. So something to be mindful of, and generally it's the right thing to do. So having a well-maintained property benefits you and the tenant. It's a win-win. So the following are the landlord's responsibility, but bear in mind it's not an exhaustive list. As you will do a bit more research and you'll find that there's other few things you need to look into, but don't have time for that at the moment. So EPC is very important to get that done on a property. Has to be done EICR, sorry, I meant, which is an electrical certificate to make sure the property is all in a good condition. That needs to be done every 5 years. A qualified electrician will be getting that done. So like I mentioned, the main purpose of that is to make sure the property is safe, and it's a legal requirement, so you have to do this. It's very, very important. The second thing is gas safety certification. A gas registered engineer will be able to conduct this to ensure the property is in a safe condition and there's no leaks or potential other issues that could possibly arise at a future date. So it's a legal requirement, something you have to keep up with. The third one is a fire risk assessment. So these are the guidelines, etc., everything online that you can sort of have a look at. It will give you a good idea. But anything for, like, for example, novice landlords, it's better to call a professional. That's the best process, best step to be taken. So smoke, heat and carbon monoxide tests, they should be tested and recorded on when they were carried out, and of course putting the alarms, etc., everything inside the property. A Legionella bacteria assessment. So the assessment will analyze and determine the risk that this deadly bacteria can cause and what is required to get it rectified. The next one is general maintenance issues. So these are such things as broken fittings, windows, fixtures, decals and flooring. They should be inspected and addressed so the tenant moves in with no complaints whatsoever. So general wear and tear, such as cleaning drains, tidying the garden, etc., all the grass areas, the light bulbs, etc., everything, you will need to get these sorted out before a tenant moves in. But you're also letting the tenant know what sort of condition that needs to be maintained, because it is their responsibility to deal with it thereafter. Things like, for example, light bulbs, etc., everything. So landlord insurance. As a responsible landlord, your insurer will have a reasonable standard expectation, meaning that you'll be taking reasonable precaution to ensure the property is in a good standing and not neglecting issues and expecting the insurance company to pick up on the slack when you make a claim. I've seen it many times in the past where insurance companies have refused to carry out works if they see negligence. So particular things to bear in mind are things such as gutters drains, banisters, roof tiles, etc. They should be maintained to minimize loss. What else? How quick should the work be done? What's acceptable? So this is all subjective. Put yourself in the tenant's shoes. Would you want to be waiting around a long time with no help coming around? So just bear that in mind. Generally speaking, responding with 24 hours, within 24 hours is as expectations. And if it's simple to acknowledge, just best thing to do is just simply acknowledge the issue with the tenant. Just let them know that you're aware of it and you'll be rectifying it. It just stops the tenants from constantly ringing you and setting the expectations in the right place for them as well. The next one is EPC rating. You have to make sure it's a minimum E rating to be able to rent out your property. And these issues can very easily be solved if your rating is not in the right place. Just speak with your letting agent or just find a contractor off the internet. As mentioned earlier on, communication is very, very important. You want to be clear and concise in the communication, and you want to document all of it. So that's just in case you need to evict the tenant. So the judge can stop you if the tenant reports that you've not been responding to maintenance requests and not been upkeeping it. You'll need to give at least 24-hour notice when your tenant, when you need to get access with your tenant into the property to carry out any repairs. So some tenants are comfortable for you to use a spare key and some are not. So that's something you want to be keeping in mind with and working with the tenant directly. Now, I've been asked a lot about withholding rents for tenants. Are they allowed to withhold or they're not allowed to withhold? So we're going to be going over that now. So under no circumstance can a tenant withhold rent. It's in the tenant's agreement that it should be clearly mentioned that a tenant cannot withhold rent for any reason and they must pay punctually. So if in the unlikely situation they aren't satisfied with the maintenance of the property, then they have legal processes which they need to follow. They can't simply just withhold rent. It's simply just not acceptable. So if a tenant does stop paying you rent, they will be giving you a lot of ammunition for evicting them. But for you to exercise this, you need to make sure you've got clear evidence and communication at all times that you've been responsive with all maintenance requests to the best of your ability. And if the tenant makes an excuse, then you have all this communication that you can sort of fall back on, and you will have all the records to be able to prove otherwise. So for example, if the tenant doesn't give you access, you can clearly demonstrate that you have been giving communication directly with the tenant to ask them to gain access to the property and they've not been giving you access. But obviously, like I mentioned, have that documented so you've got clear proof. So can you charge tenants for repairs? You can't, unless they damage something, then that's the only sort of situation where you can be charging them. So are property expenses tax deductible? Yes, the short answer is yes, but it's a tricky area. You should definitely approach a specialist in that area regarding these kind of questions. But generally speaking, bills for repairs, maintenance, all this kind of stuff is tax deductible, but home improvements aren't tax deductible. But like I mentioned, having an accountant that's specialist in this field will usually give you a clearer indication. Maintenance issues. So maintenance insurance. Most insurance is down to wear and tear, and insurance policies don't cover that. So you will need to keep on top of that to make sure exactly what your policy is inclusive of and what you are getting out of it. So just to let you know, we are heading towards the end of this. So any questions, let me know right now so we can just wrap it up. And in terms of delving into the work of managing your own property or even owning a rental property, etc., is really complicated. And you want to be as well rehearsed as possible inside this field to make sure that you're not stepping on any sort of any legislation, etc., that you don't want to be transgressing anything. So you can reach out to your local council to get a better understanding and to familiarise yourself a lot more with the HSSRS, which stands for Housing Health and Safety Rating. So keeping up with repairs and maintenance. Maintenance generally consists contacts with your tenants and to carry out the work steadily so it doesn't creep up at you all at once, and usually maintaining a heftier bill towards the end as well. So a satisfying tenants will simply mean there's no void periods, rent arrears, or trouble experienced. So it's a lot to remember, and I'll be recommending you head onto our website, abbeyproperty.com, for a written article on this, where you can just recap everything that I've mentioned here. And you can use, like I mentioned earlier on, the article as a checklist to make sure you ensure you're compliant at all times. So drop me an email, a Facebook message, or just ring me. I'm always happy and always I'm always happy to add lots of value and answer any questions that you might have. I hope that's been very useful for you guys today. And if you've got any questions, like I mentioned, just get in touch and I'll see you next week. Bye for now.